And we can fill these gaps and these fears of not being good enough with this sense of victimhood. Now, if you are victimized and you can't do anything to change that situation, you are a victim. You are a victim in that moment or in that time, in that relationship. You are the victim and you should own that position. As you move forward, and if you've got choice about how you feel about yourself, and if you remain stuck feeling like a victim, you're in victimhood. And I know it sounds like a play on words, but it's really important to understand that. Because a lot of the times I see with my clientele is that some people are victims and they don't give themselves permission to see that. And they're used to suppressing it and telling themselves a story to try and make it feel better for themselves. Now, we do that because we're constantly trying to make ourselves feel safe, and that it is really hurtful when the people that we want to love or believe should love us are treating us with complete lack of respect. And if we don't want to acknowledge the truth of that, we will turn it in on ourselves and try and work out how we cannot be the problem. That is how we throw ourselves into victimhood, that we feel that no matter what we do, someone's going to come along and take it away from us or put us down. So we start believing all the negative experiences that we have had are the only experiences we're going to have. And then what we try to do is survive in that mentality.
Insight and Awareness Spiritual Explorer. Soul intuitive, emotional and spiritual mentor and award-winning author, Lorraine Nilon.
Welcome, explorers, and thank you for being part of the adventure. Please like and subscribe if you want to know more about reconnecting to your soul, recovering from your wounds, and rejuvenating your zest for life, because that's what this podcast is about. It's about understanding yourself, and that is not an easy thing to do. Our emotions, our fears, and our beliefs are constructs around us that we have developed for many reasons. And one of the biggest beliefs that I want to talk about today is our victimhood. And this is not a popular subject. As soon as you start talking about victimhood and that you may be able to do something about it, people feel their protective mechanisms come up, which I completely understand, and can still catch myself out instantly trying to defend myself when I feel like someone is victimizing me. And that can be something very subtle, like when someone says something or misunderstands us, that can make us feel victimized. Or when somebody says something that we feel is their judgment or using a moment of vulnerability to judge you and try and feel superior for themselves. Our human nature at times is not a pretty thing, and we can treat each other with lack of respect. And we get that with bullying. We see it when people want to put others down so that they can feel more important about themselves. And if you've had a lifetime of betrayal and disappointment and abuse, or you've ended up in a narcissistic relationship where someone has stripped you of your self-confidence and your self-esteem, and those that have experienced childhood abuse never really got to form a strong self foundation. They have a cracking in their foundation because they weren't given the right to develop as they naturally were meant to. Because when someone sexually abuses a child, that's what happens. And we can fill these gaps and these fears of not being good enough with this sense of victimhood. Now, if you are victimized and you can't do anything to change that situation, you are a victim. You are a victim in that moment or in that time, in that relationship. You are the victim and you should own that position. As you move forward, and if you've got choice about how you feel about yourself, and if you remain stuck feeling like a victim, you're in victimhood. And I know it sounds like a play on words, but it's really important to understand that, because a lot of the times I see with my clientele is that some people are victims and they don't give themselves permission to see that. And they're used to suppressing it and telling themselves a story to try and make it feel better for themselves. Now, we do that because we're constantly trying to make ourselves feel safe, and that it is really hurtful when the people that we want to love or believe should love us are treating us with complete lack of respect. And if we don't want to acknowledge the truth of that, we will turn it in on ourselves and try and work out how we cannot be the problem. That is how we throw ourselves into victimhood, that we feel that no matter what we do, someone's going to come along and take it away from us or put us down. So we start believing all the negative experiences that we have had are the only experiences we're going to have. And then what we try to do is survive in that mentality. Some people thrive on it. They believe that's how they get attention. So we've all met someone that no matter if what you say to them, they're telling you their woes, they're telling you that all the problems in life, and they're looking to get your empathy and hold your attention, and it's all about them, it's all about them. And if you suggest anything that might make it better, they will counteract, and then you will be the one victimizing them, and then all of a sudden you get into often some form of gaslighting where they start putting words into your mouth, start saying that you said this, start misconstruing your intention. I was trying to help. Someone's complaining they can never get a car park. Oh, there's one over there. Well, that won't fit my car. So I'm still the victim. Don't take that away from me. And that kind of victimhood can be extremely taxing for the people that do care for them, because they're constantly trying to work out what solution is going to make you feel better. And if the person that's stuck in victimhood holds that space of, if you're not aligning with me and letting me repeat and repeat and repeat this victimhood line, then you're victimizing me. And that can make you feel very drained, because then you've just got to hold that space, listen, have full attention on them. If you look away from them, they go, you don't care, all that kind of stuff. So sometimes when people are so entrenched in their victimhood, they'll use it as a control mechanism. They'll use it to control you. And it's something to look out for, because what that does is creates a toxic relationship. And whether it's friendship, work colleague, or a partner, if you're constantly propping someone up and they're counteracting you, then they're using their victimhood to control you. And there may be some really good reasons why they're stuck in victimhood. But if they're using it as a weapon, then you are going to feel extremely drained around that person. Makes it hard. And when we become trapped in our own negative self-beliefs, they're really hard to break. And we can try affirmations and we can do all those sorts of stuff. But if fundamentally you haven't resolved the core of why you have that negative self-belief, it's like white knuckling yourself. You'll manage to hold to a level of believing what you want to believe, and then as soon as something happens that causes you to feel victimized again, or feel that you can never get it right, or you're not good enough. And that might be just walking into a group of people and feeling your own anxiety about walking into a group of people. It doesn't necessarily have to be what others are doing, because when we ruminate about our negative self-beliefs and we hold them and we keep thinking about them and we keep, I don't like to use the word playing with them, but we do. We do the scenario building in our head, or we take something that someone did or said and we then believe everybody is thinking the same way. And a lot of the times, how you can identify an addiction to a negative belief is if you are throwing statements like always, never, this is always going to happen to me, this never changes, same shit, different day is a very common one. Those kind of things hold you in the belief that this is how it is. And what it does is it deprives you of choice, the choice of how you want to feel about yourself. So that becomes part of the victimhood that holds you in the negative beliefs. Now, I'm not saying this is easy to shift. I'm not saying it's easy to deal with. It's actually not. These are fundamental core beliefs that we have within ourselves, but they're misconceptions. None of us were born to be inferior. None of us were born to be at the end of others' oppression and disrespect, quality of all souls. So when we experience that, we develop belief systems about it. And often, especially with childhood abuse and those that have been in long-term toxic relationships, those beliefs have crept into your psyche and they become a part of the false foundation that we create underneath ourselves. And then they become something that we protect. And we do all that without really consciously understanding that's exactly what we're doing. So when we're looking at dealing with our unresolved emotions, we've got to be prepared to deal with our victimhood. And as I've said many times before, is every emotion, every belief, every fear is layered. And you'll deal with the layer you can at that time. You might think you have that all resolved and all of a sudden it'll come back up. And victimhood is one of those things that constantly comes back up because we're stripping away the layers until you feel that complete self-acceptance. We talk about self-love, but self-love is actually being prepared to look at and resolve those emotions that make you feel inferior to others or inferior to the image you believe you should have, your own expectations. So that desire to create an image can hold you in victimhood, because every time your image fails, and remember, they're just an image, illusions, expectations are a prediction of what we think is going to happen. So if it doesn't happen, then all of a sudden we can feel very victimized because it didn't work to our control or plan. So a lot of the time what you find is victimhood and control work side by side, like each end of the seesaw. We feel we're in control. We don't feel like a victim. Something doesn't go our way. We run down the other end of the seesaw and we believe that we are now victimized. And if we don't take self-responsibility, we will look around to see who we can blame. And many times what we'll do is we'll blame someone that really didn't have a lot of input into your control not working. But the person that gets falsely blamed is going to feel like a victim, and the pattern goes around and around. So our human nature and the way that we treat each other when we're not secure within ourselves becomes a perpetuating cycle that holds people in this betrayal, hurt, disappointment, and we keep running up and down this seesaw of control and manipulation. Betrayal is one of the hardest things because it means that you had the expectation that the other person would not have done what they have just done, whether it's talk about you behind your back, if it's a partner fooling around with somebody else, someone stealing money from you. Whatever someone's doing that you didn't expect will feel like a betrayal. And we have people, narcissists in this world, that they are completely indifferent to everything they do of how it's going to affect another. So we have others that look at it and go, I would never do that to you. And then we feel very victimized. We feel like that person is judged as inferior and that they could do it. Sometimes we've got to really pull the filter in a little bit to know when it's appropriate to tell someone our judgment. You can have your judgment. You don't necessarily have to tell people about it. And that way it's more an observation. But if you feel the urge that you must impart your judgment on other people so that you can prove you're right, your filter will be faulty because you will stop caring about how your judgment is impacting another person. Cycle goes round. Our negative beliefs about ourselves cause us to compete against reality. We don't realize that. We don't see it that way. We're trying to either prove or disprove the belief. So if we believe we're not good enough, then we're looking for evidence to prove whether that is true or not true. And as soon as something doesn't work or someone doesn't respond the way that we expect, we believe it's true. And what that does is it stops us from observing someone else within their own space. And what I mean by that is, regardless of whether I'm here or not, is that the kind of treatment they have for other people? And most of the time it's yes. No one really targets one person. Now, if you're in a narcissistic relationship, you will see them out in the wider world pretending to be the greatest person ever, the kindest person, the nicest person. And, in an upcoming book, I wrote about a story where a man was standing there telling his wife how he had taken the boss's wife to the doctors because he couldn't make it. So he drove her down, he waited in the car, took her home, made sure she was right. And what a great guy he was. And she just had to organize herself to go to hospital. And she had to organize her friends to pick her up. And he didn't even inquire about, are you okay? How did your day surgery go? But he was standing there going, this person will think I'm great, da 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 da. You get that. That's a narcissistic trait. But generally, how you can allow yourself to move back into the objective observer role, or the witness, if that's the terminology you prefer, is by asking yourself, if I wasn't his partner and somebody else was his partner, would he treat them the same? The answer is yes. So what, especially for narcissistic people, is they can go out and they can hold this image in certain circles, but they can't hold it up forever. So that's why you get to see their traits. And that's why when you're first going out with them, they try, like everyone puts on their best to try and impress the new people. But as you get to know them better, that slips aside. And if they think that you are under their control, then all of a sudden, it slips right away. And you have people that will work on those people that are very kind and caring. They find a lot of the times they experience where someone believes they can treat them however they like, lash out, get rid of their emotional tension, say whatever they want, waiting for them to reset and do it again. So they don't take any responsibility for using the kindest person in the room as the dumping ground. And eventually, the person that's being dumped on enough will actually decide they don't want anything to do with that. And the really kind people will just drift away and not put themselves into that situation. Because part of our victimhood, if we feel that we've had something unjustly done to us, we'll want validation for it. It's part of our instinct. We want other people to acknowledge it. So we have people that will run around and tell everyone, this person did this to me, they did this to me, they did this to me. And they're looking for people to validate it, but they never tell you their part in it. You know, Joni stopped talking to me. Why? Oh, she just stopped talking to me. And I'm sure if you went and talked to Joni'd have a story of, well, it was just toxic. And every time I said anything, I was told I was wrong. And I just decided, just sort of drifted. Other people, if they've got narcissistic traits, will use the silent treatment for punishment. And that's the catch, is when we're looking at narcissistic traits and human relations and things like that, is there's a very fine line between the two. One will do it for self-preservation. The other will do it as a weapon. And that's how you can tell the difference. When you have these negative belief systems within yourself where you feel not good enough, or you feel a sense of shame about yourself, or you're really pulling yourself apart, it makes you really susceptible to, instead of objectively observing, you actually become embroiled in all these chaotic stories that other people are running. And people will be nasty. People will put words into your mouth. People say that you said things when you didn't, because they are using that to validate themselves. Now, most of them are hoping that you never find out, and the others don't care. Again, the difference between the different sort of traits that we have. So when you're looking at dealing with your own negative self-beliefs, you're giving yourself permission to heal the wounds that other people can use. If you're watching someone and they're doing something and then they're nasty to you or they're judgmental, they're not going to do it. It's not a one-off. What you'll find is they're feeling the ground to see, can I get away with this? Can I get away with this? Can I get away with this? And that is why boundaries are really important. Now, boundaries are flexible. We give people grace for certain circumstances. If someone was yelling at you and their partner had just died, it's not about you. It's about their grief and their shock and their fears flooding them. And we give grace for that. We realize that they couldn't contain their emotions. But if someone is constantly judging you every time you see them, if some people are making up stories about you, any of those kind of betrayals, then that person is showing you the level of respect that they have for you. And when you have boundaries, your level of respect for yourself has to come up to play. You don't have to defend yourself sometimes. You can just acknowledge it, drift away. And that's how we get people that can see things and objectively observe. They just don't invest in trying to convert things to a different way. They have an acceptance of, you're showing me who you are and I'm believing you. And I don't have the power or the control to teach you, train you, or educate you to treat me with respect. Because what we sometimes try to do is try and control someone to respect us. Then it's not respect. Respect does not work that way. Or we try to control the environment so they can't betray us. So we want to know where they are, what they're doing, how they're going, all the rest of it. And that control will cause the other person to feel disrespected, especially if they're not trying to betray you. And that's when our victimhood is playing and steering our direction. It's really about observing yourself. Now, we're all going to feel victimized. Someone cuts you off in traffic. You're in a hurry. You're going to feel victimized. Someone calls you a name, puts you down, you're going to feel victimized. But if it's in the moment and you keep moving forward, holding to the truth of yourself, they're just experiences that you had. But if you're storing them, if you're thinking about them, ruminating, if you're feeling that everyone needs to know how badly you've had it, then all of a sudden it's taking another life of itself and is holding you in your victimhood. Some of the traits that will show you that you are stuck in victimhood, and remember, it's just an unresolved emotion. It's not who you are. It's just something you need to deal with. It's not easy, as I've said before, but you've got options. So if you see yourself constantly feeling not good enough, that's a sign that you're stuck in victimhood. You're really using your own negative beliefs to oppose the reality that you're a significant soul. If you're breathing, you're a soul in a human body, and every one of us is significant. If you're stuck judging and comparing, then what you're not realizing is that we're all significant souls and we've all got our unique journeys, and we don't need to compete and judge. We just have to accept and take responsibility for ourselves. If you find yourself, regardless of what you do, looking for the fault, I could have done it quicker. So if you've done something and it's successful, you think, oh, I could have done that in half the time. Or you do something and you can see a small flaw in it, and that's what you point out to everyone, then you might find that that's part of you holding yourself trapped in your own victimhood and just not letting yourself celebrate the beauty of your own creativity and talents. Well, nothing's perfect. It's not meant to be. We'll always find something. When you're stuck in victimhood, you'll always find something that can hold you there. So it's about taking that moment and making the choice to go, I'm not doing that to myself. There's a fault in it. Nothing's perfect. And letting yourself have permission to experience what you're experiencing without your own judgment, taking away the joy of what you are experiencing. When there's an absolute need for perfection, you will find victimhoods very close. Or they're on the other end of the seesaw of absolute wanting ultimate control, constantly trying to perfect things so you don't have to feel or deal with any emotion other than your control. Control is an illusion, and it's the one we create in our head. We use our negative beliefs to oppose how we feel. So whether that's good, bad, whatever it is, whatever the feeling is, and we supersede the belief instead of letting ourselves feel. When we feel, it moves. When we suppress, it becomes emotional energy that we store. So if we're using our negative beliefs to intercept our ability to feel, then we're causing every moment to be the same. Groundhog Day, stuck on a loop. It holds us in the emotions that we always feel. Now we think familiarity creates safety, but it doesn't. It doesn't create any freedom. It holds us in the jailhouse of our own negative beliefs. When we are in self-loathing, we generally use what other people have done, said, or made us feel as a scaling system of our worth, instead of giving ourselves permission to hold to our own sense of worth. So our negative self-beliefs are something we should explore, and we should do it with compassion and with grace. There's a reason why you've got them. That's for sure. You didn't pluck them out of the air and create them. There's a reason why you've got them. But if you backtrack the reasons and hold to a sense of worth, you may find that you've been indoctrinated, conditioned, or programmed to believe that. And now that it is your belief system, it is also your responsibility to resolve them, something to think about. And I'll just sum it up with negative self-beliefs incarcerate us into the seesaw of victimhood and the desire for control. And there's 101 ways that we can all do that. We're all very creative in how we act them out. But if you break it down to the fundamentals, you'll find that's what you'll see, that you're on a seesaw from feeling in control to victimhood. And if you recognize the seesaw and put in the middle, the pivotal point of that seesaw, freedom of choice, self-responsibility, accountability, you'll change the seesaw and eventually you'll get off it. All right, it's time for Flip the Book. I'm just going to grab the first book on the pile, and it's Your Insight and Awareness book. And I'm just randomly opening it up to 323, page 323, and my eye has fallen on the second paragraph. So this is under the heading of Denial of the Truth of Using Images and Illusions. You use your images and illusions to control yourself to a charade of living, obscuring the truth of your soul and the importance of your soul journey. Honestly, doesn't that sum up what we've been talking about? When you accept the reality of your images and illusions, many lessons can be learnt. When you choose to be honest, you free yourself to acknowledge your truth. But this level of honesty can never be achieved if you are manipulating yourself with your own images and illusions. I think for this podcast we could say, but this level of honesty can never be achieved if you are manipulating yourself with your own negative self-beliefs. It is important for us to acknowledge that a belief system is something that we think is true. It's not necessarily true. Our emotions of shame, where we believe we're not good enough and there's something wrong with us, where did that start? What belief systems are holding that shame and that structure up? Is it because you have been treated by someone so poorly that you start to believe that you deserved it? Your negative self-beliefs will hold you in a charade of living, because if you are feeling negative about yourself, you're depriving yourself of who you naturally are. And I think that's a great question for anyone journaling. What is your belief, and is it true? And I don't know is an answer. And if you have, I don't know, that means you got some exploration to do. I want to thank you for listening. If you're enjoying the content, please like and subscribe.